Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of ElevateNonprofit.com, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Well, I'm super excited today because we're talking about an element of all fundraising and all event planning that is so necessary, which is storytelling. It's so popular and so buzzy that we've had many episodes already about storytelling. We're going to have many more. And there's even a whole conference dedicated to nonprofit storytelling.
It's true.
And the most common thing that I hear from our nonprofit friends is we don't do storytelling because we don't want to exploit people. And so today we've invited our friend Zach to be here to talk about the difference of empowering versus exploitation in our storytelling and to really be able to dive into kind of creating a culture of storytelling. So before we welcome Zach, I'm so glad to have you here, Zach, joining us. But let's give the audience an official bio so everyone knows who Zach is.
Official bio. Zach Putnam is the owner of ZP Productions, a video production firm that does cinematic storytelling for good. They are an award-winning team of filmmakers who are passionate about telling moving, character-driven stories that matter. With a mission to empower voices that often go unheard, Zach himself is a filmmaker and producer with over a decade of experience telling stories that move people. He is also an adjunct professor of multimedia storytelling at the University of Portland. Zach, thanks for being here with us. We're super glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm honored, flattered that you asked me to be here.
We're so glad.
Let's go big picture first.
Sure.
Why is it important to incorporate video storytelling for fundraising?
Well, I think, as Sam just sort of implied, storytelling in general is incredibly important for all of these organizations to help raise awareness, get people excited, and get donations, right? And I personally am a little biased, but I think that video storytelling is one of, if not the most effective way, especially when it comes to the impacting people emotionally. A well-done video story can really just bring down the house emotionally, in my opinion, in ways that can be hard to do with a live speaker or a written appeal, right? Which is what a lot of people do. And also, frankly, you have, and we'll get into this later in the ethics of it, right? But you do have a lot more control over the messaging, both you and the storyteller, right? They don't have to worry about flubbing their lines on the stage in the way that a live event can sometimes go, because we have the power of editing and reviews and revisions. And the last thing I guess I would say is that, I think that a well-produced, whether it's an appeal story or an org video, a well-produced video that you make for your fundraising event is one of the few assets that really lasts beyond the event.
Yeah.
And you can keep using it. And it's really an investment that many of our clients keep using these videos we produce for years to come and build up sort of a library of different kinds of stories that they can share with different donors. So that's sort of my big three reasons to do video storytelling, I think.
Those are great frames. Talk to us a little bit about your work itself.
So, as you mentioned in my bio, thank you very much for reading that, I have a small company and we work almost exclusively with nonprofit, or sometimes we say mission-driven organizations because, the definitions can get a little gray sometimes, but we try to work with organizations that we really feel like are doing important work, and we're excited to support them. We don't turn corporate clients away, but it's not who we go looking for. And over the years, we've built up a pretty big roster of nonprofit and mission-driven organizations that we work with, and we love it. Most of our work is in the Pacific Northwest, but we also work with organizations around the country and even around the world. In January, we were filming with a healthcare NGO in Ghana.
I was going to say, didn't I see you traveling abroad or just recently?
Yeah, we were in Ghana in West Africa in January, and we're just starting to get in, finishing, I guess, the edits for that piece. That it's actually a public service campaign to increase awareness about CPR training in Ghana. So it's very sort of unique.
Awesome.
And that's what's really fun about what we do is every week we're immersed in some sort of new topic or issue, and it's almost always something that we're really passionate about and excited to be helping people tell. So that's a little bit. But yeah, we travel. We work in Portland a lot. We love what we do. We're really passionate about it.
Well, I think something that's really unique about our work with ZP is that you are sort of a collective of storytellers. It's not one person, it's not one camera. You have a whole team that you pull from, and often we'll even resource other folks if you feel like you need to be able to have resources in other locations, or, be able to bring a whole team in to do. We recently did some video work with you that was all environmental based, and you were able to bring in all sorts of resources for us to be able to get underwater shots and to be able to get all sorts of aerial shots. So I always appreciate that you have sort of an abundance of resources that you're tapping into that just aren't limited to your camera and you, but are, other resources and team members. Well, the crux of the conversation today is that idea of how do we tell a story when, as a mission-based organization, we're protecting our clients, we're really valuing the time and energy that they have, and even sometimes we're working with organizations that say we don't share our clients' stories. So one of the sort of buzzy phrases that we use often is ethical storytelling. Kristen, you talk a lot about ethical storytelling being really based in not leading with deficit, but leading in strength, making that individual kind of the hero. Yep. Kristen as a storyteller is a scriptwriter and often is in the script of our event programs. So I wanted to ask you, Kristen, how would you define ethical storytelling before we start talking about how it plays into video?
Sure. I think the way I think about ethical storytelling is power.
Okay.
Who has the power? And for me, when the power doesn't sit with the storyteller, we're heading into the territory of not doing ethical storytelling.
Yeah, exploiting someone's story.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So how does that sort of play out when you're thinking behind the camera of pulling together a story? You have a lot of power. You're controlling the lighting, you're controlling what they look like, you're controlling the camera angle, you're controlling the editing. So talk to me about what ethical storytelling sort of means to you and how that plays out in your process.
Yeah. Thanks. Great questions. This is certainly really important. And I agree with you. We encounter organizations all the time that are very protective of their clients and their stories, and totally understandably so. And so
they should be.
Yeah.
They absolutely
Yes,
should be. That's
absolutely.
important. I love that instinct
Yeah.
in our organizations that
Yeah.
they're immediately like, whoa, hold on. What do you want to do here?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a great place to start. Let's have a conversation about this. What could go wrong, and how can we avoid that? How can we make this an empowering process and not an exploitive process?
Yep.
And the good news is I think it's totally possible to take it in a very empowering direction where the people whose stories we're telling at the end feel great and feel uplifted and honored, and really it's a cathartic experience for some people. So for us, ethical storytelling has a lot to do with that, just sort of focusing on empowerment, which, to your point, power, right?
Yeah,
right.
And making sure that the storytellers feel that they have all the power that they need. And a lot of that has to do with transparency and consent and just collaboration and making sure, I'm very careful to never say that we're telling someone's story. We almost always try to say we're helping somebody tell their story, because it's for them to tell their own story.
Yep.
I have all these tools and tricks and ways to do it, but I want to make sure we're doing it in a way that the storyteller feels good about it during the process and at the end of the process especially.
So you just said consent, and I think that that's an important element. Our friend Tammy Zonker, who is a fundraising consultant, always says consent is more than a form, and that consent is something that can be removed at any time. So when you're prepping for being able to get in front of a camera with a storyteller, how do you help the client set that storyteller up for success? What are the things that you think about with making sure we have consent before we go into that process?
A lot of it is about transparency and letting people know what to expect. So and sort of just moving slowly. If some people are excited and they say, "Great, let's shoot tomorrow," and that's fine, that's great. Other people want to kind of talk through the process more, and so we're very big about offering opportunity for a pre-interview or just a meet and greet for the storyteller to meet the film crew, ask about what to expect, what the process is going to look like, what kind of questions will you be asking, and let them sort of get as much sense of what is going to happen before it happens and give them opportunities to say, no, I'm not going to be comfortable with that. And, who do you want in the room? I think that's really important, asking people like, who would you be most comfortable talking to? We're very open to sharing the interviewing responsibilities in a way that lets the storyteller feel more comfortable and like they're speaking more to a peer perhaps, and certainly you don't want any kind of weird power dynamics in the interview itself.
Right.
So I think that I kind of answered some of your questions.
Yeah, I think sometimes one of the things that you and I have worked on together is thinking about that interviewer sometimes being the person at the organization that they know best. Because sometimes that just makes them feel more comfortable. This is someone who knows their story and has a relationship to them and can be an intermediary as well and kind of direct us if they feel like this person needs a minute or they would feel more comfortable. You actually did an interview recently for us where the individual felt more comfortable holding their dog. And so we adjusted the shot to make sure that they could hold their dog. So that idea of making sure we're taking time, which is something that you talk a lot about. Can you talk about how time can actually help with framing the story from an ethical perspective?
Yeah, I think it's just, it's kind of obvious, but I'm always pushing for people to give us more time to tell these stories well and to do them, the service that they're due. And that means both sort of in the run-up, in the pre-production phase, like let's give time for the storyteller to ask questions, do a pre-interview, whatever, that kind of stuff. Don't rush that. But also the day of filming. It's really important to me that we carve out, generally speaking, more time than we need. I would so much rather wrap early than be like, hey, I know we were supposed to leave an hour ago, but there's still 5 things we haven't done. So I'm always asking for more time. And what that helps us do is move at a pace that the storytellers don't feel rushed. I mean, it's easy for me to forget because I'm doing it all the time, right? But these people that we're working with typically aren't accustomed to being interviewed and being on camera. And they've been told a film crew is going to come to their house and set up in their living room. And the things that they're imagining in their heads, I think, I don't know if you ever seen that movie, What About Bob? But there's a scene in there where Good Morning America or something comes and films in their living room. And that's what I always assume people are imagining, that we're just going to tear their whole house apart.
Right.
Which, first of all, we're very low impact and very respectful about not taking over and destroying people's living rooms. But when we arrive, introducing ourselves, having time, again, to just talk with the storyteller, help them get comfortable, ask questions, build some trust, chat a little bit before we start asking interview questions. That's so helpful. And I think it's also a sign of respect. If we are rushing, if we get in there and we're like, we got to set this up, we got to start your interview, we got to get out of here, boom, boom, boom. I think it makes people feel like their story is being kind of minimized, right? Whereas we're like, hey, I got the whole day carved out for you here, and we want you to tell your story. Tell your story as many times as you want until you feel like you've told it the way that you wanted it told, and that just takes time. You just got to allow time for that. And I know it can feel like an imposition when we're asking for people like, hey, could you carve out like half a day for us to come hang out with you?
Right.
But my experience is that, if people don't have time, they'll say no. And most of the time people are grateful for having that amount of time and not feeling rushed. And the other thing that's very satisfying about our job is that I think when we do this right at the end of like the interview day and at the end of the editing process even, our storytellers frequently are thanking us.
Yeah.
I have like a stack of gifts on my desk that people have given us over the years just because a process that they were often very nervous about ended up going like very smoothly and in a way that they felt good about, very positive about. And people show so much gratitude for that. And it's really meaningful, really moving.
Well, I think the other element of time there is it allows someone else to drive. And I think that becomes really interesting during an interview because often in that interview, everyone's discovering pieces of the story, right? I think we're given sort of the frame of this is who we want to interview. This is the story we want to tell.
Right.
But that isn't giving the power to the storyteller.
Right.
Giving the power to the storyteller is getting in for the interview and actually hearing the story. And I think sometimes it takes us into just beautiful, unexpected places. And so I think in that interview process, I just want to sort of surface the idea too of, where we think focus should be is not helpful sometimes to the storyteller in terms of their journey and their trauma. And so I think that's where exploitation starts to happen is when
Right.
we're like, ooh, that's the juicy stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that's where the trauma is. Why are we going
Right.
to stay in this place and ask them a bunch of questions they don't want to answer, right? And then also, I think sometimes from a programmatic point of view, this person's story has been surfaced for an outcome for the organization. And sometimes a storyteller can have a different vantage point on there. And so sometimes it's about really making sure we're fighting for their story
Yeah.
and what that looks like. And it may look a little bit different than the storyboard going in. And that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, stories are so unpredictable and infinitely varying, and that's part of what's magical. You know, we have all these sort of preconceived narratives going in, and that
Yeah.
can be helpful, but you need to be totally open to letting those go and seeing the story go in a different direction. And also in terms of consent, I think it's important at the end, to make sure that those storytellers get to see that video before it's put out in front of the public.
It's so important.
so important,
I
right?
want to
And that
put
they
a big
know.
exclamation point on that. We have been in events where we were under the impression that the storyteller had seen the video and they hadn't. And the impact of that is that they're like fragile in front of an audience. And so that opportunity for them to say, I agree, this is how I want my story to be told, I think is so important for them to feel good coming into the event and feel like this is a representation that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the experience for a lot of these people of seeing their story told and what is often a very traumatic story, a very sensitive story for them to tell, seeing it told is very emotional. And I, like I said, I think usually for us in a really positive way,
Right.
but they shouldn't be going through that experience like moments before they're about to like step on stage and this is the first time they're seeing it. And yeah, that's really important. And we're actually we're talking with a storyteller right now who, to our surprise, wasn't given the opportunity to watch her story before the event, and it didn't turn out exactly the way that she would have liked it to.
Yeah.
And now we're working with her to figure out how to help her feel better about that. And it could have been so easily avoided by just
Yeah.
letting her watch it before the event, Like,
Well, and I think the other piece of that too is also not telling someone's story in the middle of their story.
Oh, yeah.
So we start to diminish the trauma they can potentially experience by sharing their story or seeing their story told if their story is actually in the rearview mirror. We talk about this a lot, sort of in the rearview mirror a little bit, so that they have some distance and perspective on that story.
Yeah.
So that, there's a whole neuroscience piece about you put, sort of emotional trauma into long storage when you can write a narrative about it. So we're actually engaging them to sort of tell us that narrative. But if that narrative is inducing trauma for them, I think it's actually our responsibility as someone who has potential power to use to advocate for them to go back and sort of understand with the organization, like where are we in journey here? Is
Yeah.
this still happening? If it's still happening, it's actually not responsible for us to be in that story with them. They need someone else who can actually really support them in that therapeutically or emotionally or whatever in that story. So I think, to your point, sort of the longer term conversation before even getting to telling the story and shooting the story with the organization and understanding what those dynamics are really set the storyteller up for success throughout the whole process, as well as, sort of those of us who are partnering with them to tell their story.
Well, this comes down to how you select a good story.
Yeah.
So let's take a pause for a minute.
Great.
When we come back, we'll talk more about like the tools for making sure we're applying good ethical storytelling.
Loving the fundraising elevator, but wondering how you can talk to Sam and Kristen? Well, now's your chance to do it. Book one-on-one consulting time with Swaim Strategies experts Sam, Kristen, and Mary, and get all your event questions answered. Our team has you covered on strategic planning, fundraising strategy, storytelling, data tools, and registration support. Get the tools and the help you need to make the most impact at your fundraising event. Book at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Zach Putnam talking video storytelling today. Let's get some practical pieces on the table for folks to consider. How much time? So I'm an organization. I have this amazing vetted story we would like to tell in video format
For our event that's in a week.
for an event that's in a week, right? What are we talking about in terms of planning and production time, filming, getting all that on the calendar, start to finish? What are we looking at? What should people realistically be budgeting for time so that you're set up for success?
Well, not to be annoying, but the more time, the better. You know, like if we, I mean, even it's what might seem absurd, but like if we can like follow a story for a year, you can do so much better storytelling when you can actually show change over time. When you can be like, hey, let's interview this person now when they're just starting this program, and then interview them again at the end of the program. You can do such great storytelling with stuff like that. I know that's not always practical. So a more practical answer that is still out of some people's reach, as I would say, it'd be great to have a month to plan, a month in which you try to complete your filming, and a month that you do your editing and post-production. So just like a month for each sort of phase there is a nice pace.
So we're talking 90 days, 3 months. That's what we're talking about.
That would be kind of my, preferred ideal. We frequently work with smaller windows of time than that, but I think that's a nice way to do it if you can.
And we find on the shorter time frames, things get lost.
Yeah.
There are things you have to pick and choose from. And so longer allows the storyteller to really be at the heart of what's happening.
It gives you so much more ability to do it right. And one thing that we haven't even talked about much, but like it is, I believe, important to think about culturally specific crew members, interviewers, et cetera, being part of this project.
Yep.
And just, logistically, it can be difficult to arrange those things when you only have like a week to pull together the crew. The more time I have, the better a team I can put together to fit that project,
I do think from an ethical storytelling perspective, who's in the room matters.
Yep.
It allows the storyteller to feel comfortable. We have had experiences, you and I working together, where we've had a storyteller who English is not their first language. So making sure that we have someone in the room that is able to set them up, prep them, ask them questions in a language that's comfortable for them, I think is a critical element. Like you said, having time to plan for those pieces is so critical. But what about also just the filming time? I mean, let's say, for example, we're working with an elected official whose schedule is very busy, or a CEO whose schedule is very busy, and getting on their schedule is really challenging. Or what if we're working with someone who has multiple jobs and their schedule doesn't allow them to have a lot of flexibility? What are we thinking about when it comes to working within the constraint of time? How much time is ideal for us to set aside for the filming of the interview? And then also that other thing we haven't talked a lot about, which is B-roll content. What is ideal for you?
It's going to be case to case a little bit, right? Like, typically if we're interviewing the very busy elected official or CEO, we don't really need to sit down and do an hour-long tell us your life story interview. And that can be squeezed into 15 minutes or something if we're just looking for a few key things, right? So, you have to kind of think about what you are trying to accomplish. In the sort of classic appeal story sense.
Someone who's never had a camera in front
of them. Exactly,
yeah.
Right? And our goal for, let's say, day one is to get a good solid interview and some B-roll. Then I typically ask for like a half day, like a 4-hour block. If they'll give me the whole day, I'll take it. But a half day is kind of a good way to, a full day, people get sick of each other, right? But 4 hours with somebody usually gives us enough time to get that initial interview and some B-roll. And sometimes that's all the time we have. And so we can sometimes get all the B-roll. But we can tell a richer story usually if we can set aside another day, another maybe half day, where we can film B-roll with the storyteller in a different setting, frequently doing something that they talked about in their interview. It just creates a more dynamic, interesting world of the film, if I may, and gives the storyteller more time to kind of think about. Sometimes when we come back for day two, they say, hey, there's a thing I forgot to say, or I never quite said it right. And I say, great, let's mic you up and we'll get you to say it right now, and it gives you another chance to do that. So, two half days is kind of like my ideal minimum to do an appeal story with someone. Sometimes we don't get that much. And if someone will give me more time than that, I'll take it.
Awesome.
What should folks be looking for in a good production partner?
Well, specifically for this nonprofit stuff that we're talking about, I do think that our experience as nonprofit storytellers, not to just say what you should be looking for is us, but I would say that
Yes, and
any organization that has experience with nonprofit storytelling, because there are many, many video production companies out there, and a lot of them can make beautiful images, and a lot of them can tell really powerful stories. But I think some of these ethical considerations are just really not on the radar for a lot of video production companies.
Agreed.
And not even really criticizing them. It's just not something they have to think about because of the kind of work that they typically do. And it's very much on our radar and kind of the first thing that we're thinking about. It's sort of a baseline of pretty pictures and great stories. And then how can we do this in the most empowering, ethical way possible while making it beautiful and compelling? So I would just say that, someone who has experience with this, not everyone even knows what an appeal story is.
Yeah, fundraising,
exactly.
Right?
A fundraising angle is something that I think is important. We're just in conversation with an organization that works with a production company out of DC, and the production company does, like you said, beautiful storytelling, pretty pictures, really incredible content, but mostly they work in the entertainment sports field. And so they're used to getting that really breathtaking shot of the ball hitting the basket. They're not necessarily thinking about it from the angle of a hero's journey. They're not necessarily thinking about it from the angle of fundraising or talking to a donor. And so it makes a big difference in thinking about your partner being someone, your film partner being someone who isn't just the pretty picture, but is also a storyteller with fundraising in mind.
Yeah. And I actually try to make a point to get anyone who works on our team to attend one of the events because, again, a lot of people just have no context.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah,
literally
true.
don't understand where this is going and what the context that the people will be experiencing this is, which is all a very important part of it. So,
well, and I think too, thinking about if I'm in the organization, I'm trusting this client relationship to someone. So choice of partner and sort of their ethics around how they're going to tell this story and their process and what that is, those should all be important things for me to understand to be able to entrust this trusted relationship that I have to someone else to sort of carry that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a great deal of appreciation for how much trust our clients put in us. To say, hey, go on over to this person's house and ask them to tell an incredibly sensitive story in a way that they feel good about it and the organization feels good. It's a lot, and it makes me feel really good that a lot of organizations trust us to do it. But I agree. I don't think you could trust just anybody to do it right.
Yeah.
So because we're talking to nonprofit folks, here's the money question. What should folks be looking for in terms of cost or price tag associated to doing video storytelling for their event?
Yeah, good question. It's funny, whenever I quote a price to a new potential client, half the time they say, oh, well, that's half as much as we paid for the last video. And then the other half of the time they say oh, there's no way we could ever possibly afford to pay that much, because there's just a very broad range. There's very high-end video production companies out there. And there's somebody on the board's nephew got a new camera for Christmas and they think they could do it, those are the two extremes I'm sometimes sort of competing with. So all I can really say is that our pricing has definitely gone up over the years as our team has grown and et cetera. Right now, we are quoting around $7,500 for a typical 3 to 5 minute video production, which I know is not the cheapest you could get a video, but it's definitely not the most expensive. But the other thing that we do is that we think we quote $7,500 as this is what we think our work is worth.
Right.
This is the value that you're going to be getting if you hire us. But we understand how nonprofits work. And so we generally donate a portion of our fees in kind. And it's pretty close to a pay what you can system with us. I don't know that other organizations do that, but any other video production company that works with nonprofits, I think is going to be ready to be flexible because that's just how the world works here. So Yeah, I would say anywhere between 1,000 and 10,000 would be a
Yeah.
perfectly normal amount
Yep.
to pay for a video. So
Yep.
we kind of quote ourselves somewhere in the middle of that, but we are very flexible with what clients actually are expected to pay.
Great.
So
Thanks.
one of the elements that you have sort of informed us a lot about, and I think, Kristen, you talk to a lot of organizations about, is that one of the ways to approach ethical storytelling is to actually create a culture of storytelling within an organization. And I've seen that play out so powerfully and impactfully, and just like relationships and how donors are being shared the work of the organization. But I think that there's a question that often comes up of how do we do that? How do we create a culture of storytelling? So this is kind of a question to you both, because I think you both interact with organizations that are approaching it in different ways. But Zach, how have you seen folks really create that culture of storytelling?
Well, I think it's important to work on getting buy-in from everybody in the organization and to talk about how storytelling is not just important to the organization, but that ethical storytelling is important. Because as we sort of talked about at the beginning, it's not uncommon for there to be sort of a divide between the development people who want to tell stories and the programs people who are naturally and justifiably protective of their clients, right? And that's because they imagine the worst. And there are lots of examples of that, right? So I think if the whole organization, probably a little bit of the responsibility falls on the development team to foster this culture from day one that like stories are important to us and we are very careful in how we do it so that we never are exploiting and we're always empowering, and just make that clear to everyone, like we're thinking about that. So they know when storytelling comes up that the organization is going to approach it in a good way. And like, there's lots of little ways you can do that. I was thinking about how you mentioned in the interview, sometimes it's good to have a programs person who actually has a relationship with the storyteller be there to do the interview or at least be in the room. And that's another great way to kind of get buy-in, right? To let those programs people be part of the process and be in the room and let them observe that, hey, yeah, we're being really careful and thoughtful about how we do this. And that way next year, when you go looking for stories, that person says, hey, I saw like what a really positive experience it was for so-and-so last year. I do have an idea for a story. Here's somebody else that you could talk to.
Yeah.
You know? And that's so helpful when people get on board. And I've seen it. I've seen clients that we've worked with for years, like certain programs, people like slowly over time at the beginning, it was like,
You're winning them over.
yeah. And then like a couple years later, they're like, oh, I had this great idea. This person wants to talk to you, you know, and they get on board because they see what a positive experience it can be, you know.
Yeah.
What about you, Kristen? What do you see organizations using to kind of create that culture of storytelling?
I think it's just working it into daily practice so that people start to connect their personal mission and why they do the work with the work, and that donors want to be a part of that. I think the ethical piece is huge. I think you can show that through everything that you're doing so people come to understand what storytelling actually means to your organization, because I think because it's a buzzword, you were talking about that earlier, I think a lot of people just jump to that, like we're just gonna, you know, air our laundry and exploit people and tell stories all over without their permission. But I think if people can start to talk about what in the work inspires you, that's where the stories will start to come in an organic way. I think when you try to reverse engineer it, like we need an appeal story, who's got one?
Right.
It's like, that's terrible. And it doesn't set your storyteller up for success, right? People are just like, well, I think there was Jim and he was a part of that thing. And I think it was kind of cool. Let's interview him. And it's like, no. It should be coming sort of from the ground up versus top down. And so I think it's about just naming it as a priority.
We've had organizations actually create speaker bureaus, which I think is
Yes,
really
great.
helpful.
It's super great.
Being able to actually solicit their client base with, we're looking for folks that want to share their story, and even submit just like a little paragraph about their story so that the individual who's volunteering can say, yeah, this is the thing I most want to talk about.
Initial consent, check.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always this sort of pause moment that I have when we're working with program staff, and I hear, oh, there's this really great person that's in our program right now. And when they say right now, I say pause. I don't know that someone right now seeking services is in a moment where they have a perspective to share, right? They may be having a great experience that they can share, but they don't have a long-term impact. And it might be a little raw for them to talk about the services that they're currently receiving. And so I think being able to also coach program teams to think about those folks that they've seen go on a journey and that they've seen the long-term impact or implication.
But also bookmark those folks that you see having such success now.
Yeah.
And let's circle back and talk about it. That's why when you build the culture with storytelling within your organization, you'd be like, what's the update?
Right.
What's going on now? So that can be a story in the future. That impulse is great, but we don't want to lock people in where they are now.
Yeah.
We want to let them continue on their journey.
Well, let's take a break, and then we're going to come back with some fun Q&A and dive a little bit into some good examples and stories that you have to share. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Super.
At Elevate, we believe in bringing people together. Our online learning platform for fundraising events has webinars, workshops, downloadable tools, and more designed to save you time and stress when planning your next event. We're getting nonprofit, development, and event planning professionals the tools and ideas they need to create events that inspire donors and raise more money. So join us at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
Welcome back. We're here with Zach Putnam talking video storytelling. Zach, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about when a video is at its best. What does it feel like? What's the experience of it like?
Well, I think when these kinds of videos are at their best, that they feel very authentic, which can look a lot of different ways. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the production value or how it's filmed or edited, but so that it feels sincere and that, the people who are speaking in it are speaking from the heart. And, I avoid scripting a lot of the time just because I think it comes off as less genuine. So authenticity, I think, is really important, especially when the context here where we're asking people to, pledge their donations to this organization. They want to feel really good about it and not like the organization is maybe manipulating the truth to make it more emotional or anything like that. It should all just come off very real and authentic and again, sort of transparent, I guess, like the whole process, that we're just sort of letting the donors in on what goes on around here in a very real way.
So we want to hear some stories from you since we're talking storytelling. Tell us a story about one of your favorite videos.
Well, it's so hard to choose, like my children. I was trying to narrow this down a little bit. I'm going to mention a few here, and I'll try to zero in on one. We work with Canine Companions, which is a service dog organization in Santa Rosa, and I love basically every story we would do with them because there's always a dog as well as like an amazing human with that dog, and those stories are always great. We did a story called 4-Ion for Friends of Trees a few years ago. And I was really proud of that one because, trees, it can be sometimes hard to tell a compelling emotional human story about trees. But
they're on a longer journey than we are. Those trees.
Right? And so we did that. I'll say one that actually comes to mind often for me, though, is one that we did work with SWAIM, if I'm not mistaken, with the Oregon Food Bank on the Whitney's Giant Ass Cinnamon Rolls story.
Yes.
And that one has a special place in my heart just because there's humor, and it's sometimes hard to incorporate humor in a tasteful way. But it also has a lot of heart. And that one's one of my favorites for sure.
Let me tell a little bit of the story of that video because it was a really special video. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were trying to speak to the huge volume or outpouring of support that was coming from the community in support of feeding the community. And there was this incredible story that came out of the community of Whitney, and her giant ass cinnamon rolls. And this was a mom and daughter team that in the midst of COVID, mom was trying to figure out how to entertain daughter. And daughter was really worried about how people were going to get fed. And so she started making these big cinnamon rolls, like giant pan-sized cinnamon rolls, and selling them online, almost like for auctioning them off almost, and sold some of these cinnamon rolls for thousands of dollars. And so a single cinnamon roll would feed, thousands of people and impact the community on a whole. But in addition to that, she started making them and having people sponsor them and taking them up to the hospitals for the emergency responders. So it was this humor. It was a moment of levity when we needed it most, but it was a really impactful story about how this family was impacting the community. And so it was a fun story to tell. Well, we like to go on a little ride on the fundraising elevator and take the elevator to the penthouse and talk about a party, and then take it to the basement and talk about tools or the inner workings in the boiler room. So our question for you first is, we head up to the penthouse and we go to a really good party. Tell us about a time when you saw a video really impact a good party.
Wow. Well, I like to think every event where our videos are shown that I've been to,
They're all incredible.
It made quite a splash. There's one that comes to mind years ago before I was really doing a lot of this work. I was doing video work, but less of the nonprofit storytelling. I attended an event at the Portland Art Museum that was for I Have a Dream Oregon, which I think has now rebranded to Greater Than. But there was an appeal story that was actually produced by a local company called Blue Chalk that I'll give a shout out to. And it was just a really beautiful, well-told story about a young girl and her dreams and how this educational organization was, helping her get there. And I thought it was a beautiful story, and I saw the way the room reacted to that story when it was told. And, immediately after that, of course, there was a paddle raise and people were giving all this money, and I just sort of saw that whole process happen. And that was one of the moments when I really got excited about realizing oh, wow, I could just tell stories like that, and people might even pay for it, and it might even help organizations raise more money. This is a thing you can do. So for me personally, that was a moment that I really what is this? What do you call this? And I started to learn what an appeal story is and all that thing. So
well, now you're the expert in the room talking about appeal stories.
Well, I'm always learning.
So if we head down to the basement in the boiler room and we're looking at some of the tools and the inner workings, can you tell us, what do you need to prep for a good video?
Well, you, like we've mentioned, should give yourself as much time as possible. You ideally should create a culture of storytelling so that you have stories on hand. You've got a backup list of storytellers ready to go to. And then, I think you just need to be, thoughtful about your approach. We talk about using a trauma-informed approach, actually, a lot of the time, which the CDC has a great little page on 6 principles of a trauma-informed approach. That
we'll link that for everyone.
It really ties very closely into a lot of the same things we're talking about here about transparency and consent and power. So that's a great guideline to use. Does that answer your question? You're looking for more nitty gritty? You need a tripod and some lights? Okay.
No, we're assuming you're going to bring all those.
Yeah.
Usually.
We assume the nonprofit doesn't need to provide those if they've engaged you. Well, if they do want to engage you, how do folks find you?
Well, you can find us at our website, which is zpproductions.com. We're also on Instagram at zp.productions. And those are probably the 2 best ways to reach us. You could email me directly at zach@zpproductions.com if you wanted to.
Great. Awesome. Well, we'll put links to how to get a hold of you in the show notes. And we also will be releasing this for video content. So provide us some examples that we can share as well. We'd love to be able to share out your work. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping folks rethink what's possible with video storytelling and ethical storytelling. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Let me give out one more note. Every year we do give out a grant to one organization for a free video production.
Listen close, everyone.
If you're interested in that, I would just reach out to me and let's talk. We haven't opened a formal application process yet, but we're always interested in talking to people who might like something like that.
Thanks for being such a great partner to the nonprofit sector, Zach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's really great working with organizations like SWAM in this space because it's a lot of fun, and I feel like we do a lot of good work.
We do. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Whitney Roots, and I am the giant ass cinnamon roll baker.
I'm Paul Roots, and I am the assist to the giant ass cinnamon roll baker.
I'm not a baker by training, but I love to bake. And it's not my own recipe. I make it bigger, and I double the icing.
Who came up with the name Giant Ass Cinnamon Rolls?
I was drunk, probably. What's important to state first is that our daughter turned 7 on March 12th. So that for us was the day that COVID-19 got serious. You know, schools were closing, people were gonna get sick.
And we canceled the birthday party.
We had to right, you know, explaining all of this to a 7-year-old. I had a big scream cry session, completely lost it. I knew I needed to cheer myself up, and I woke up that next morning and I turned to Elsie and said, Elsie, do you want to make a giant ass cinnamon roll? She's like, yeah.
Who wouldn't?
So we did. So we filmed it and thought it would be cute if we posted some videos and pictures on Instagram. Okay guys, here's what we're doing. We're gonna auction off a giant ass cinnamon roll, and whoever sends me the highest bid gets the roll. Immediately, someone texted me and said $100.
Oh, people want to spend money on these things. How would we bend that in a helpful direction? It was obvious to me that it should be the Oregon Food Bank.
Throughout the weekend, people kept upbidding, and we ended that first weekend with a $300 giant ass cinnamon roll. I thought, why am I limiting myself to one donation? Why don't we get 2 cinnamon rolls? And then I'm gonna start crying. Our friends got together and pulled all their money together and then had it matched by Nike. So their roll was like $1,200. Mm-hmm. So what is that? I can't do the math. 1,200 plus 300, that's $1,500 to the Oregon Food Bank for 3 cinnamon rolls over 2 weekends. My friend, she said, do not bring me the cinnamon roll. If you bring it to me, I will,
I'll eat it.
I don't want to eat
It'll
the
be terrible.
cinnamon roll. So please, would you donate it to a healthcare worker who's working COVID? So that's when I got a call from the Oregon Food Bank saying, we like what you're doing. Why don't we create a website for you? The goal was for every $500 we raise, we would give a cinnamon roll to a healthcare worker. Hi, Katie.
Hey,
Hi, you guys. Hi, everybody.
Katie Lang is a friend of ours. She really helped propel this.
When I saw the giant ass cinnamon roll rollout, I got really excited, and I contacted her and I said, I think your goal's too low. I think you should raise your goal.
By the end of the first week, we had upped the goal to 5,000, then 10,000, and we had surpassed $13,000. Now, if you're doing the math, that's 26 cinnamon rolls that take 4 hours each to bake.
It got busy.
It got really busy. Storm Large found me on Twitter.
And I was like, do you need help? I have a truck. Dude, I'm there, I'm driving.
And she said, please let me help deliver the boxes. And our daughter had decorated them. They were cute.
And they said, yeah, we decorated. And I'm like, guess what? I could do better. So I was being a jackass. And so I decorated a bunch of boxes. So it became this funky, fun art project. And then she started auctioning those off.
The big incentive, if you won the Storm box, was that she would deliver it to your house. After she had given herself the label of best box decorator, Paul said,
And then her husband is a frickin' artist, an actual artist. So he trounced me.
You know, I paint pictures of people, right? What's my role during a pandemic, you know? How do I use the skills that I've worked decades to perfect? I could not have predicted that I would be doing marker portraits on cake boxes. Who knew?
It made me feel so much better and less helpless. And I got to go to hospitals and thank the frontline workers in person. And of course, selfishly putting all those things in my car made my car smell like Christmas.
And Katie said, let me talk to Terry about whether he could help out.
I just knew that he would want to help, so I reached out, and of course, there he was.
Should I say big ass? Giant ass? Do I say giant ass? The art was very cool. My personal favorite was one that was opening night preseason when I was wearing a kind of a retro 70s outfit. People
went pretty wild for those.
Like a lot of things, it starts as an idea and it just mushrooms into a phenomena.
Tillamook gave us cream cheese, Bob's Red Mill gave us flour, Organic Valley gave us milk and butter, Shepherd's Grain gave us flour.
I offered to donate flour for her project. It raised awareness about the need to eliminate hunger, which is so important, but it did it in a way that was very lighthearted and fun, and I think that drew people in.
It was one person, one family doing what they could to help their community without waiting for some other group or some other entity to provide them an avenue. They did it themselves.
I had no idea when I made the cinnamon roll that it would end up in a $52,000 fundraiser for the Oregon Food Bank. 150,000 meals. We could not have done this without, I'm start crying. We couldn't have done it without all the donors. It was absolutely a community effort.
It really is an amazing example of how an individual's motivation can alight a whole community.
I don't want to go back to normal because normal is how we got here. And that was normal, taking each other for granted.
We want to emerge stronger than normal because normal didn't work. Normal wasn't enough. There were problems in normal, and so we want to solve those problems as we emerge.
Now Elsie knows how to spell ass.
She loves that. To be 7 and decorate a cake box and you get to write ass.
And say
Super fun. We're incredible parents,
There's so many organizations out there who would love help like this. So get creative. Just keep rolling with it. Pun intended. Wacky ideas work, and don't be afraid to try them.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced by April Clark and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by Chris Peterson, Whitney Gomes, and Nathan Bouquet. Video editing by Steve Osborne. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and support from Sophia Keller, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett.